Hi, this is Cheryl Johnson again, and this is the last module in our series of assessment and evaluation for deaf and hard of hearing children, birth to age 3. This module is going to recap much of the information and focus on some reminders, some guiding principles, and some strategies. To start, we want to make sure that the assessment that was done was sufficiently comprehensive to identify all areas of need with your child. This is one of the stumbling blocks when we do transition to Part B, the school age services, is that oftentimes the assessment wasn't comprehensive enough to really identify some gaps that a child may have. And along with that, we want to make sure that the assessments were appropriate for your child's language, communication, and development. So they need to be conducted in the way that your child communicates, and if we're looking at overall development, not in a way that would influence the results and give us inaccurate information if it was focused on the wrong type of modality. If your child is not found to be eligible under Part C, be sure and ask questions about how the system is going to monitor your child's progress. So if you're not eligible, which is unusual, we want to make sure that there's some way of monitoring your baby so that we can be sure that they're reaching developmental markers. And if your child was not eligible at the preschool transition for Part B services, which are Part B of IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, we want to know if they're going to attend a public preschool program, then they will have accommodations available to them under a 504 plan or services under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And those plans provide services to children in preschool if it's a public preschool program. We want to make sure that the evaluation and assessment was performed by specialists who are not only knowledgeable about the development and education of our child, but also deliver it through the mode of communication that they use. So this is important that each area that's being assessed include the full ranges of languages and communication modes used by your child. For instance, if your child uses sign but also uses listening and spoken language, we want to make sure that assessments are done in ASL or signed English, whatever sign system is being used, as well as listening and spoken language. The assessment, again, should be of sufficient scope to evaluate all aspects of each area. These are now some guiding principles that should guide our assessment. The interpretation must be analyzed within the context of the impact of deafness, hearing impairment, or a combination of deficiencies. Some of our children may have additional disabilities that really impact the assessment and the services that are being delivered, so we want to make sure we're able to interpret all of the test results to be able to sort of sort out the influence of each of those other areas. And we want the IFSP team to really recognize how important the role of assessment is when we design services, as well as when we're monitoring progress, and how the parent is involved with designing those services. Some strategies. I highly recommend that you start a notebook and that you collect and track your child's assessment scores in each area that's assessed. We have a sample form in the handouts that are available for you that you could use as a way to start. But it's important that you keep track of what your child's scores are on the assessments that they receive over time so that we can carefully monitor those long-term trajectories and go back and look at when there may have been some plateaus or to help us make decisions about services. So oftentimes the schools don't keep those running records, and so I think it's really important that the parent does that. Make sure that your early intervention team provides a thorough assessment going back to transition to preschool so that if they're eligible, we can ensure eligibility. And be persistent about what you feel is best for your child and your family. Remember your values and make sure that that guides what services are being provided. And if you aren't comfortable with the services that are being recommended by your IFSP team, you need to be persistent and talk about, well, this is what my child is doing. This is why I feel like we might need to look at a different avenue or some changes. And in that relationship with your early intervention provider, through that trust that you've developed, hopefully you'll have those honest and open communications. Remember that good is not good enough. Too many times we're told by professionals, oh, your child's doing fine. We want to advocate to get the right services that allow our child to reach their potential and not just be good. If they have the capability of being better than good, we want to make sure that's available to them. When they transition, we want to develop an IEP that minimally results in 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. We really don't want gaps to develop, because once they do, those gaps are hard to close. So if the child is not making the progress that we expected that meets that 1 year's growth in 1 year's period of time, we may need to adjust services. We may need to do some additional assessment. We need to sit down and make some decisions about why not. Why aren't we seeing the growth that we expected? And lastly, know the law and know your rights. Everything that we talk about is in the law, and the application of that law to your child is very, very important. And your ability to advocate for your child oftentimes is dependent on how well you know the law and what your rights are. With that, I would like to wish you well on your journey with your child, and as you make the transition to Part B, remember that you're the one that's in charge and that your advocacy will be very, very important to how well your child does.